getting rid of people it didn't want. Oh, you're a drunk? Put him on a boat.
Which is odd, since Americans on the whole actually tend to drink a lot less than Europeans.
Right, but
they do.
We're alcoholics more often. It's not about the amount.
It's actually we're not more alcoholics more often.
Are you sure about that?
Yes.
Alcoholism is more prevalent in Europe than the United States. I just find that hard to believe.
It's not more prevalent, but it's you're alluding that Americans are more likely to be alcoholic, which is not true. Right?
I was defining prevalency of alcoholic as the likelihood to be alcoholic, but maybe you've confused me by saying that what I thought was the same thing is not the same thing. So now I don't know what to do.
I think there are a lot of people in France, for example, that are alcoholics because they drink every day 2 or 3 glasses, and I think that could be defined as alcoholic. I think it pretty much
alcoholism is in way I'm defining is the clinical definition of like you have a problem drinking, you can't stop drinking, it affects your life, it ruins your relationships, that kind of thing. I thought was more prevalent in the United States, but I don't know that either. Maybe I'm wrong.
I think in France there are a lot of people who are like casual alcoholics that it doesn't necessarily ruin their lives, but they really need
then it's not technically alcoholism.
Isn't it? Okay, maybe
no, I don't think so.
Well, let's after the show we'll dig deeper to find
into the nature of alcoholism.
Oh no, like how you define alcoholism and then figure out the stats from that.
Well, there's a clinical definition of alcoholism. Yeah. It has to do with whether you can there's functional alcoholism too, and there's all kinds of stuff. But just drinking a lot is not the same as being an alcoholic.
Right. Yeah. So my impression was people get blind drunk less in France, and maybe it's different. I think it's different in other European countries. So that's not even about Europe; it's about France. But yeah, because
the countries with the highest level of alcoholism, according to a USA Today study, are all in Eastern Europe. So that that could be why Roger, why you have that stat, right? It could be that I'm thinking UK, France, maybe Germany, and all of Europe includes Eastern Europe, of course. So if that's the case, then that would change the nature of it.
And I can tell you, they like to get drunk in Finland.
Oh, howdy! All right, yeah, interesting. Maybe they didn't send enough Eastern Europeans to the U.S. in the early days of because the colonial powers were not Eastern European; they were Western European.
Roger, you want me to track time while you do the other stuff?
Sure, that'd be awesome.
All right. I need to get a person to thank. Let's see if I can find a French-sounding name. Is that? Oh, I don't know if this person is French though.
You could get an American name that you would
French up, as they say.
I can give you an American Portuguese name, but it might be selection bias.
Well, but it also should be a name of someone who's been supporting us for 5 years. Here we go. This is not a French person, but you'll see why. Patrick, and all this is leading to asking Patrick if he would read that bit. Is that all right?
Wait, it's still many of you. I don't see the name.
I'm changing it right now.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay, no, you can't use that one.
Why?
Because it means something in French.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it could be.
Yeah. Okay, fine. Back to the drawing board. How about this one? That's hilarious. And that poor person.
So this is the best pre-show in forever.
Yes. So make sure you know when we start, so you can subtract the times as they go, because
we're starting late. Okay. Yeah. How about that?
Exactly. Okay. Yes. Perfect.
Okay. Thank you for catching that. Here we go. In 3, 2.
Brian Bourdeau has supported independent tech news directly for 5 years. Be like Brian. Become a DTNS member at patreon.com/DTNS.
This is the Daily Tech News for Tuesday, February 26, 2019 in Los Angeles. I'm Tom Merritt.
And in Finland, where it's cold, but not as cold as before, I'm Patrick Beja.
And I'm the show's producer with Roger Chang.
Hi, Roger. Sarah Lane off today. Playing the part of Sarah Lane on today's show will be Amos, our intern. Well, you're not our intern yet, Amos, but soon.
Not until Tuesday.
Next Tuesday.
Official. Yes.
You become Amos the intern. Today, you're just a man.
I'm a timekeeper. Let me get to that.
Yeah. Amos helping us out today. Sarah's off. She'll be back tomorrow. Let's start with a few tech things you should know. Bloomberg's Mark Gurman says his sources say Apple has been testing a sleep tracking feature on the Apple Watch, something a lot of people have wanted, with plans to bring it to the device by 2020. Apple sells an under-mattress sleep tracking sensor from Finland's Merritt, which Apple acquired back in 2017. The health app on iOS also supports sleep tracking based on alarms and third-party integrations.
But then when do you charge it? That's the question. Google launched version 1.2 of its cross-platform UI framework called Flutter. It now supports Android app bundles and instant apps and lays the groundwork for helping devs accept in-app payments. Flutter 1.2 also includes new keyboard events and mouse hover support in preparation for eventual desktop app support.
Researchers at the security firm Eclipsium are publishing a paper describing how 5-year-old vulnerabilities in baseboard management controllers, or BMCs, can compromise IBM's bare metal cloud computing service because of the Supermicro hardware it runs on. The BMC vulnerability can allow a customer to leave a backdoor on a cloud machine that would remain even after the server is wiped clean and re-provisioned. IBM will now reflash factory firmware on all BMCs before re-provisioning, though a lot of security researchers are saying, man, there's a way to subvert reflashing, so we're not done yet.
And this is not the Bloomberg report about Supermicro from a while back. Nothing to do with that.
Totally different.
Google Docs AI-generated grammar suggestions is now rolling out to all G Suite users. Google has not announced when it will come to all Google Doc users.
I would like it, though. All right, let's get into some mobile news. There's a Mobile World Congress happening in Barcelona. HTC has added 20 new decentralized apps to its blockchain smartphone, the Exodus One. That's the one that went on sale in December. This includes a numbers app that will let a user exchange their own personal information. They say, look, you can track me. You can figure out my accelerometer data. I'll decide what you can have, but in exchange, you're going to give me some cryptocurrency. The idea is to give users control over what data is shared while providing some transparency in how that data is used. You actually get to see who the data is sold to in this. Kind of interesting. HTC also partnered with Opera to allow for Ethereum micropayments on supporting websites, with support for Bitcoin and Litecoin coming in a few months. So you would be able to have micropayments go to sites rather than having to sign up for something like Patreon or something like that. HTC will also now sell the Exodus One for cash, fiat currency. You don't have to buy it with cryptocurrency anymore. It's available for $699 starting in March. Before you could only buy it with crypto. Patrick, what do you make of all this?
I make a company that is desperately trying to find a use for that device, which was a cool idea, but I'm not sure is working out for them or really for anyone. Or is it?
I don't know either. It's certainly a headline grabber because it's got cryptocurrency and that's a buzzword and it gets clicks. I love the idea of experimenting with ways to give users control. I'm not sure that a lower selling phone like the Exodus One is really going to move the needle on that anywhere, but it's an interesting experiment. And maybe if it works in a small way, it will inspire other apps on other platforms to happen. I could see that.
Yeah, it's definitely a chicken and egg issue, because we've been talking about the idea that you could decide who you sell and how you sell your data, who you sell to and how you sell it. And this is the type of technology that could enable that. But in order for this to be really useful, it would need to be implemented quite widely. And it doesn't seem like the user base of that phone would be enough to encourage people to implement those systems. maybe for some specific communities it could work, but it seems like something that would remain limited until it's adopted more widely.
Yeah. I mean, for those people who were like, CryptoKitties isn't enough for me to buy a phone. Now you got some other apps to look at. But I still think you're right. The Exodus One is a laboratory. It's an interesting little laboratory to experiment and try some stuff. It's not necessarily the place where something's going to take off.
And I also wonder, actually, if these ideas could be implemented without the complication of cryptocurrency, selling your data and things like that. So,
no, I think that's a really good point too.
All right, let's move on. The United States Federal Trade Commission will launch a task force to monitor competition among technology companies. It will include current members of the FTC's Bureau for Competition, as well as 17 staff attorneys. While investigating current practices, it will also examine previous mergers, that's really interesting, and could recommend companies be spun out. Meanwhile, the U.S. Justice Department lost an appeal to reverse the merger of AT&T and Time Warner for failing to demonstrate anti-competitive behavior. It is unclear if the DOJ will appeal the decision to the Supreme Court.
Man, last time the DOJ lost a case against the merger, I dismissed it, along with many other people, as, well, they're not going to appeal it. The merger's about to go through. And the merger did go through. And we're like, see? And then the Department of Justice brought the appeal anyway and was like, if we win, we'll undo the merger. So I'm not going to say they won't appeal it to the Supreme Court until for sure someone at the Department of Justice says we are for sure not appealing it to the Supreme Court. But I think this other FTC effort is very interesting because there's been a lot of rhetoric out there about breaking up Facebook, saying make them spin out WhatsApp and Instagram so they are not dominant over data across 3 platforms. A lot of people looking at Google the same way and saying you should break them up into various components. And this seems to be a nod, not towards doing that, but towards taking the steps to investigating that kind of idea.
And it seems like this kind of behavior, first of all, would have been impossible 3 or 4 years ago, and the situation was different, but it still felt like the companies were unassailable. And now, of course, the mood has changed a lot in the whole of the countries. But in the US, at least from the perspective of an outsider, it feels like the kind of thing that would be politically too difficult to implement or to put together, because it seems like anti-business practices. And for all the talk that we have, and we have a lot of it, of Facebook maybe being too big, being dominant, it always feels from the outside like it's all just talk and it will never turn into anything concrete. This is at least a first step, and I feel a significant step towards that.
Yeah, my concern is that this ends up just being a sort of a harassment vehicle. There's a great interview that Justin Robert Young did recently on Politics about the toothlessness of the Federal Election Commission, who are empowered to do all kinds of things, but the realities of their enforcement powers leave them unable to do stuff. FTC has a little more enforcement authority than the FEC, but that said, you still need a lot of political will to really go through breaking somebody up. And only if someone on the government's side is very angry at a particular company and pushes the FTC to go after them for one reason or another, could be the current president, could be a future president. I don't see this really being full of a lot of teeth yet.
So even this step might not have any effect, like at least putting people on notice, or companies. And
it'll have an effect because companies will want to tiptoe around this. But I don't think you're going to see them storming in to take Facebook to court to break them up or anything like that. Yeah. On lighter news, a survey conducted by Adobe estimates that 53 million people in the United States own at least one voice-activated smart speaker. We are a nation of voluntary surveillance here. 74% of people use them to play music. That's one thing that I use mine for. 66% check weather. 58% ask fun questions like, How many pints in a gallon? Because we don't use the metric system. 66. Let's see. Setting alarms, checking news, searching. Those are all popular as well. Shopping, however, not that popular. Only mentioned by 26%, and that's down from the last time Adobe did this survey, when it was 30% back in August of 2018. The survey also found that people would like their television, their car, and their thermostat to have voice control, but not their oven, refrigerator, or washing machine. This actually tracks pretty closely to what I think and how I use mine for the most part. What about you, Patrick?
Well, I have two voice assistant speaker things, which I have stored safely in a cupboard somewhere because they are dumb and I don't use those things. I don't understand why people use them. And yet everyone loves them, but I don't get it. I must be,
why do I use you?
Basically, that is what I want. Why? Yeah. I understand. Oh, did you actually ask the...
She's telling me how to use her. Yeah.
Right. Well, so I understand I'm in the minority here, but this kind of every story about voice assistants, and there are many, kind of befuddles me. That being said, if you like voice assistants, initially when I was reading about TVs and thermostats, I was kind of laughing it off, but it actually makes sense. Maybe on a TV or a thermostat, it would work, and not in an oven or refrigerator or washing machine. That wouldn't be as useful.
I don't use mine for my thermostat, but I do use it for the television. I have a Harmony hub hooked up to it, and it's great. You just say, turn on the TV, and it turns on.
All right. Google updated the Google Home iOS app to list Apple Music as an integrated service for home speakers, although it can't be linked to a Google Home device at the moment. Apple Music was previously listed in the Google Home app in a separate limited availability section as only available on iOS devices.
So this is addressing two concerns that I've had. One concern is if Apple wants to be a service company, then Apple Music needs to be on more platforms. And certainly all their services need to be on more platforms. But Apple Music is their most successful service-oriented product right now. And this indicates that, hey, maybe we really will get Apple Music busting off of Apple products. That's a good sign to me. The other thing that's always bugged me about these voice assistants that we were just talking about is the walled garden aspect of them. I don't like that because I use an Echo, I can't get my Google Play Music on it. I don't like that if I want to use a Google Home, it's like, well, that's an entirely different ecosystem and entirely different choices, and I can't do all the same things on it. What I love about computers is even between Mac and Windows, you can mostly do the same things no matter which computer you have. So the idea, I know this is a very small section of that, but the idea of Apple Music showing up on Google Home when Google has its own music service and Apple makes its own devices, I think would be a great sign that we're at least eroding those walled gardens a little bit.
I don't know if it's eroding the walled gardens or just getting Apple Music on that device, and that's where it will stop.
It's a very small erosion. It's not going to break down the wall. Trust me.
A couple of pebbles have fallen off. It reminds me of iTunes appearing on Windows and hell freezing over, as Steve Jobs put it.
Yeah.
And I think it's somewhat similar. It makes sense for that specific product, for that specific service. I'm not sure it means a lot more beyond that. Maybe we're going to see other Apple services come on other devices, but it seems like such a gigantic shift for Apple to do. It would essentially mean Apple is pulling a Microsoft, and you can't do it halfway, right? You can't just do some of the services, like half of them, and the others you keep on your devices. And you need to be everywhere if you go that route. And it just doesn't feel like...
Yeah. Well, this is step by step. Apple Music's available on the Amazon Echo. You've got iTunes showing up on Samsung TVs, right? Like, granted, we're not even close to there yet, but these are the kinds of signs I would want to see that Apple really is serious about doing that. Versus like, well, we'll put iTunes on Android, I guess, because we have to. That always felt sort of reluctant. They never really supported it as well as they did iTunes on iOS. I think with Apple Music, they've done a better job on Android, and seeing them show up on the Echo, maybe the Home, that starts to give me a little more optimism for this marketplace.
Maybe.
All right. France's Avenir Telecom, which licenses the Energizer battery brand, is showing off an 18,000 milliamp hour battery that's 18 millimeters thick and is also a 6.2-inch Android phone. In fact, Vladimir at The Verge says it's a battery with a phone in it. It has 6 gigabytes of RAM, 128 gigabytes of storage, and a pop-up module with 2 selfie cameras in it. Vlad at The Verge also says it's 3.5 iPhones thick, if you want to think of it that way. The battery lasts a week, 7-day battery life. It's going to weigh down your pants, but it's 7-day battery life or 48 hours of continuous video playback. You could really binge on this thing. The Energizer Power Max P18K Pop comes out this summer. We don't know the price. That's the biggest thing for me, is what the price is going to be. But also, again, just going off of Vlad's article about this on The Verge, he said it was not the greatest user experience. So,
yeah, it seems so. First of all, I've never heard of Avenir Telecom, so I don't know who they are. But this is the kind of thing that is easy to make fun of, but that some people are gonna get great use out of. Obviously, it's not something you want to be carrying in your pocket when you're just going from home to work and back. But if you're going on a trip, if you're going somewhere where you can't recharge your phone, instead of having 15 different batteries, you're just going for 3 or 4 days, you just take your phone and you're good for the entire trip. I'm sure this is actually, well, I'm not sure, but I would guess this is the kind of device that doesn't fold, doesn't have fancy sub-screen fingerprint readers and stuff like that, but people could actually get some serious use out of. So
and
I'm not,
honestly, 11 millimeters is not that thick. In the I have my power bricks that I use.
millimeters.
What's that? Oh,
It's
18.
18 millimeters.
Okay, but still, that's less than 2 centimeters.
Mhm.
So I don't know. It's all right. I was thinking 11.
I mean,
never mind.
Yeah, it's thicker. It's definitely thicker than a phone. That's the point. Is you
it's
don't
thicker than a phone.
want it.
Sure. I was thinking it might be thinner than the power bricks I use to carry when I travel for on the go recharging. I think it's about the same.
Yeah, it seems maybe even a little bit more, but it's a kind of use. Maybe you're going sailing, or I think the question is, why would
you need an anchor?
No, but I think the question is, why would you want this rather than a slim phone and a battery? Which I guess is a fair question. But it's all in one. There is
plug one into the other. It's all right there, I guess.
Exactly.
You don't care about
It kind of reminds me of the Nokia 210, which was just presented at MWC as well. It's kind of it's a feature phone, a very small, tiny thing that costs $35, and you can browse the web and stuff like that. But it has a 1-month battery life, and that is valuable.
Tiny, the little feature phone, right? It doesn't need to suck the battery life off. Well, I think this is the trend for new phones in the future. They're just going to get thicker and thicker because we haven't figured out battery life yet. Folks, if you want to get all the tech headlines each day in about 5 minutes, be sure to subscribe to dailytechheadlines.com. A couple stories kicking around this week that Microsoft would bring Xbox games to the Nintendo Switch. And we're not just talking about Minecraft. That's a whole different thing. Patrick, explain this piece in our time between Microsoft and Nintendo that might happen.
This is crazy. This is, for the video games industry, something that is equivalent to iTunes arriving on PC a few decades ago, or a decade and a half ago. It is insane that Microsoft would actually publish its own games. Like, we're talking about smaller games that have been successful on the Xbox, but that are Microsoft owned. And as you mentioned, Minecraft was a very different, specific product that lived it doesn't follow the rules of the industry, because in this industry you have platforms that attract players by having exclusive games. And now Microsoft is saying, not only are we going to put some games on the Nintendo Switch, we're also hearing about massive flagship franchises coming to the Switch, And the real kicker is that they would be bringing their Game Pass service, which is a subscription service to gaming, and their xCloud service, which streams games, as we've talked about a few times. I feel like I talk about this every couple of weeks, which means any Xbox One game that is enabled in that service, it's probably all of them, would be playable on the Switch. So that means that Microsoft has completely is in the process of transforming its gaming business in the same way that it has transformed its tech business, thinking about their platform not as a physical device, but as an immaterial thing that could be anywhere. And that completely destroys the idea of consoles in the gaming space.
I think it's worth reiterating for folks, especially if you're distracted and driving, doing something else. This isn't Microsoft announcing it. This is it was which outlet said that they had a source told them, right?
So there are a couple of sources. One is a YouTube channel that has a good track record. There's another one who is actually a journalist friend in France who also vetted his sources. So
Direct Feed Games is the YouTube channel that Patrick's talking about.
And jeuxvideo.com is a source that added to those rumors. And so we're not certain, but it is kind of reinforced by something that we do know. It's going to be presented at GDC, if I'm not mistaken. It's the fact that the social layer of the Xbox service is going to be available on mobile phones and the Switch. So that kind of goes hand in hand. And it's interesting for Microsoft because it means their games are available everywhere. And it's interesting for Nintendo because I think they are going to keep their exclusive games on their console, but in that context, they would also get the games from the other player. Of course, the big elephant in the room here is the PlayStation 4, which we're guessing Microsoft probably approached. And Sony probably said, "Are you kidding me? That's not how things work. We do not want your service on our console."
Well, and honestly, Nintendo, the Switch and the Xbox Game Pass and xCloud projects make sense to me. Nintendo is never trying to say that the Switch is your most capable piece of hardware. They're saying it's a fun piece of hardware. It's easy to play. It's convenient. And if you can access cloud gaming from Microsoft through it, that's just one more cool, fun thing it can do. But we all know that one of the things that fans of video games pay a lot of attention to is hardware and performance. And am I getting the most performance? Can I get the least lag? And Nintendo knows that you're not gonna get the best performance doing a cloud gaming service on the Switch. It's just going to be a fun way to access your game, and Microsoft knows that too. So this is super smart for Microsoft to say, "Hey, for that serious video gamer, there's still no better choice than the Xbox." At least that's what Microsoft's going to say, right? But it doesn't erode that to provide cloud gaming access to the Switch.
Right. The other rumors are saying that there will be another series of Xboxes, two of them, one a little bit less powerful, one a little bit more powerful for the next generation. So serious gamers will still have that option. But it underlines that the way Microsoft is thinking about its gaming business in the future is that it is an immaterial service, and the consoles, the physical consoles, are just one expression of that service, which is available everywhere.
Yeah,
pretty much in the same way that they want to be the infrastructure in tech and don't worry so much about selling you Windows nowadays for $150.
They'll sell you a Surface, they'll sell you an Xbox. They make some hardware that is tuned to their services, but they aren't trying to make all their money. Those are just ways to introduce you to their services, is kind of the way it feels. And maybe that's what they're doing with the Xbox now too.
Certainly looks like it. And it's so significant in the gaming space because, again, the way that business worked was, or still works, is that you build a console, you close it down, and you bring gamers to your console via exclusives, and then you can get those royalties on the games you sell for your device. And so that completely changes. It makes the console, or the platform rather, not a physical device, but the platform is the service. And you treat it maybe in the same way that you do your consoles previously. But I'm wondering if Microsoft isn't leaping ahead of the competition by doing this. And if things work out the way they look like they might work out, they will be in a very good position for the next stage of the gaming industry.
It's a big change. I mean, since I did the Tech TV Holiday Gift Guide show in 2002, the recommendation has been pick the console that has the games you like. That might not be advice that matters in the future.
Yeah.
Weird to think that. All right. Thanks to everybody who participates in our subreddit. You can submit stories and vote on them at dailytechnewsshow.reddit.com. Please do. That really helps us out. And join in the fun at facebook.com/group/dailytechnewsshow. I want to check in with Nate Langson from Text Message, who is giving us a firsthand report on his experience with some of the products at Mobile World Congress, starting with HoloLens 2. Nate, let's hear from you.
Well, you're joining me after I've just left MWC Barcelona for today. But the good news is that just before I left, I was given the chance to try out Microsoft's HoloLens 2, which you guys discussed yesterday, I think. Now, for context, I should say I didn't actually get to try out the first HoloLens, but I've pretty much used every other sort of VR headset out there, from HTC, Oculus, Samsung Gear, Vario, which I'll come to in a little bit, Daydream, PSVR, all that kind of stuff. And all I would say up front about the HoloLens is that for its class, it's probably the most comfortable one I've tried, and definitely the most balanced in terms of weight on the front and the back. Now, in my demo, I was given the task of rewiring part of an airplane, and actually, apparently, the bit I was rewiring was the bit that holds the engine on. They described it as quite an important part. I'd probably agree, but it was also in a booth and not attached to a plane at the time, so no one was going to die on my watch. And the HoloLens 2 has a wider field of view than the first one. And as I walked around this part of the airplane's wing, I had this big arrow and a big arrow trail in my vision that guided me to where I needed to stand, relative to the wing. And then little circles would appear over parts of the plane that I needed to attach the wires to. There was also a little dialogue box in my field of view that would follow me around if I stared at a wall for a few seconds too. And it's a really impressive piece of kit, but the experience using it actually just really reminded me that we shouldn't ever really talk about HoloLens 2 in the same sentence as, things like the Oculus and the Vive. This is totally an enterprise product. It's still totally an enterprise product as well. And I was at the announcement with Satya Nadella and Epic Games' CEO Tim Sweeney the other day. And when he said Epic would support HoloLens in future, I really don't think it'll be in the same way that the company would support other headsets. What I could actually imagine, having used this, is a scenario where you still play a game on a big screen, but by playing it with the HoloLens on, you get you get more peripheral information in your sort of between your eyes and the screen itself. I could see that working really, really well. And the other thing I wanted to mention briefly is a headset by that company, Vario. I think you mentioned them briefly the other day, but I actually managed to get some time with this today as well. Now, this cost about $6,000. It was released last week. And again, it's very much aimed at enterprise customers. But here's the thing. Imagine Oculus, Vive, PlayStation VR. Imagine they were all DVD resolution. I know they're not, but bear with me. Imagine they were DVD resolution. The Vario headset, in comparison, felt to me like it would be closer to 4K. In one of the demos I had, I was sitting in a virtual room of a craftsman's studio with paint everywhere and wooden models and shelves full of decades of old trinkets and things like that, like the inside of some open plan wood shop that's existed for a century. And the detail and clarity and resolution was so insane, I honestly had to ask the guy giving me the demo if I was looking at some crazy high-res 360-degree video or photo or something. I mean, I could literally stand in front of this virtual rack of CDs and books and read the text along the spine no differently to as if I was standing in front of a real shelf full of CDs and books. You could look down at the like chips in the wood grain on a workbench. Or there was another demo actually I had in an outdoor environment where it was raining, and I could watch the raindrops hit the floor and see the tiny ripples in the water that they would cause when they hit it. I'm not kidding. I mean, it's just not like anything I've seen before. It felt like upgrading from the first iPhone straight to an iPhone 7 or something. Like, no joke. If anyone listening ever gets a chance to try it, the Vario headset, make the journey, go and try it out. It really is insane. Anyway, that'll do it for me, I think. I've been looking at Huawei's folding phone as well, and all the new stuff that's been coming out of MWC, and I'm going to talk about that on text message later in the week. But if you have any questions about anything at the show that you've seen announced, feel free to let me know on Twitter, or just ask Tom and Sarah to pass the message along. Maybe I can record something else for you tomorrow. Incidentally, I did today see a robotic cat litter tray that I'm sure Sarah will be very excited about, from a South Korean company, where there's a robotic arm that automatically cleans the litter away into a handy little tray, and even sends you updates via an app about how many times your cat has been in the tray, and how much the cat weighs, and how many times it's done its work in there. It was special. Let's put it that way. Anyway, back to you guys.
Thank you, Nate. I think I saw that same thing at CES. I bet those people are at a lot of these conferences. In relation to that HoloLens 2 information, and again, thanks to Nate Langston from text message, natelangston.com/podcast if you want to get that. Thinis in South Africa pointed out that Unreal Engine has powered several architect rendering software packages to visualize homes during the design stage, all the way back to Unreal Engine 2. So that could be a use for Tim Sweeney and the HoloLens. And an EMT field training officer, Andy in Milwaukee, said that while $3,500 may sound expensive, this is orders of magnitude more affordable than the current solution he uses with sim mannequins. And the HoloLens 2 sounds pretty tempting for field training for emergency medical technicians. So thank you, Andy, for that. And thank you, Patrick Beja, for joining us today. What do you got going on to tell folks about?
Well, it's always about gaming and the world around us. So if you enjoy gaming, you might be interested in MVGB, the monthly video game briefing, where we will cover in a couple of days, maybe even tomorrow, the story we just covered, but in greater detail. And we'll also, of course, go over the games that are waiting for you this month, and a bunch of other things. And if you are really into gaming, go check out Pixels, which is a show about gaming that I do more seriously. Not more seriously, that's not the right way to say it, for more core gamers. Both are available on your podcast app. And I'll leave the Phileas Club for next time.
Go check out the Phileas Club too, though. It's really, 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 really good. Our goal,
FrenchSpin.com for all of that.
Our goal each month right here on this show is to get one more patron than last month. We just need 5 of you right now. Pull over to the side of the road or stop your jogging. No, don't forget though, when you go home, to check out patreon.com/DTNS and become a DTNS member. You can get an ad-free RSS feed, special episodes from me, special episodes from Sarah, columns from Roger, and more. You can find out all of the tiers that we have. You can get a commercial-free version of Just Daily Tech News Show, or you can get our Good Day Internet Show, which includes our pre- and post-show banter as sort of your afternoon drive show of the internet. It's only available at patreon.com/DTNS. So help us get to our February goal right now. Our email address is feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com. We're live Monday through Friday, 4:30 p.m. Eastern, 21:30 UTC. You can find out more at dailytechnewsshow.com/live. Back tomorrow with the aforementioned Scott Johnson. Talk to you then. Bye.
This show is part of the Frog Pants Network. Get more at frogpants.com.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
We went over.
We did.
It's just the two of us, and we talked too much.
I blame Roger.
You guys started a little late, like a minute late,
okay.
2 minutes late. So it's all
not as
good.
bad as it looks. Yeah.
I'm gonna rush away.
Okay.
Thank you for being on the show.
Good night, Patrick.
Tom, it looks like you had something you wanted to tell me.
Oh, I was going to ask you what our titles should be, but
Oh, well, okay. I'll let you all decide this. Surprise me.
Okay, that will be the title.
That's the title.
Ooh. Bye, guys.
All right, thanks, Patrick.
Bye.
It's a battery with a phone in it. It'll weigh down your pants. Nation of voluntary surveillance. The phone that's a brick and keeps going and going and going. Microsoft switching it up. That's a good one. I like that. Leaders, we have pints. We need a bigger pocket. Always good to have a Jaws illusion in here. Binge your K-pop.
Pop.
A nation of proprietary measurements. Apple Music comes Google Home. Oh, that's clever. Surprised me. Thank you, W. Scott. This one. I don't know. What do you guys like?
I like. We need a bigger pocket.
Oh, really? That's the one you like?
Okay. Fine. I'll pick something else.
It's just because we've done we'll need a something or something so many times.
Microsoft switching it up.
Yeah, I like that one. You like that one? All right.
Is that the one you secretly wanted, but hope someone else would pick? Pick that one, Roger.
I had a bunch of different ones that I liked, but that's the one I like the most. So. I would have gone with something else if you'd like something else. It's just I definitely, when I saw, and no offense, Amos, it had to be put in there because Amos put it in there.
It did have to be in there.
It had to be in there, but as soon as I saw it, I'm like, oh, we're not picking that one. So that is it's a show without Merritt.
It's a show illusion of choice. Secretly.
No, you could choose. You chose the only one that I felt that way about. That's why I was like, really?
I'm here for you guys.
Anyway, I just feel like we've done that one a bunch. That's all. Microsoft switching it up works for me. I'm good. Well,
all right, so here's the alcohol use chart that I got from the Lancet for 2018.
Oh, you were. This is what you were doing during the show.
I especially like that. There used
Notice
to be
how I haven't denied it yet.
Yeah, there used to be a trend of Patrick and Tom like having these little mini arguments before the show, like having some contentious issue that nobody thought would be contentious, and they started talking about it. And now Patrick was on, and he didn't have an opinion either way, but Tom and Roger were going at it.
Right, it has to be somebody, right?
Yeah.
So this is a chart of drinking prevalence, not alcoholism, right?
Well, no one has a rate like alcoholism specifically. Yeah. These are the number of people in our country that are alcoholic. Yeah. Everything that's listed is prevalence of drinking and how much they drink per year, per capita.
I would argue that doesn't help me arrive at my point.
No, I understand.
Yeah,
but I can't. I don't.
But you can't find that. And I'm not saying looking up the sort of the amount of drinking in Eastern Europe, I could easily see Europe as a whole over-indexing the United States on that. But all right, we'll keep looking. We want to learn. My whole point was, though, that a lot of the quirks about the United States could be explained by selection bias. I still stand by that. Where if you have to be a certain kind of person to have wanted to come here in its early days, right? You had to want to risk the ocean voyage, or you were forced into it because you were for some reason considered undesirable.
Well, I mean, Georgia was a penal colony.
Georgia was a penal colony. Obviously, slaves were brought here against their will because of racism. And obviously, there were indentured servants that were brought here against their will because they were poor, but it was the only way to pay their debts. So I'm not saying that...
Or certain peoples that fled.
Flood persecution or religious persecution. There's all kinds of reasons. I'm not saying everybody that came here was an alcoholic. I'm just saying you might have a higher than normal level of that in a population just because of those various biases.
Maybe
says,
it might be too long.
You look like you need a drink.
But according to the chart, the people that drink regularly are at least in Western Europe, are Spain, Britain, France.
Now, Tom, on that same along that same line of thinking, would Australia have a similar correlation with their alcohol use?
You know, it skates really close to saying something unintentionally offensive. So I'm trying to be real careful. I think the thing that you can safely say is the types, the cultural, the socioeconomic status, the makeup of the people who are allowed or forced to go to a place during colonization could have some traits selected, like accidentally selected for certain traits. It gets dangerous when you try to say who those people are and what those traits are, right?
Yeah.
Right.
But I think that I wonder if somebody's done studies on that to say like, hey, there was a higher incidence of manic depressives being shipped to Australia and the United States because they caused trouble, and people just were like, sentence them to shipment or transportation. That's what sentence them to transportation, and then you have a higher level of people with that particular illness in the colonial country. I don't know. Maybe that's not true. I don't know.
This is what Good Day Internet is for. If you are a sociology major and you need a new thesis.
Yeah, right. Or you are like, oh no, 5 people already wrote that one.
Well, the difficulty is like people didn't have those as like people weren't rated as, oh, you're a manic depressive back in like in the 18th century.
It's hard to find the data, right? No,
not to mention like not everyone that came over
maybe an unanswerable question
was forced to a lot. For example, at one point in time,
that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. It's because I'm not saying everybody that came over was forced to. I'm saying you might if you had perfect data, you might find a higher incidence of people because often folks were forced to colonize to get them out of the country. But then the people who weren't forced, Roger, I think there's some interesting things to discover there. Were there personality traits that made them more likely to voluntarily want to go?
It was probably, at least for the Spanish colonialism, it often tended to be second or third sons, because the way that hereditary law worked, the eldest son got everything.
Right.
So if you wanted to be something, you were the second or third son, which actually coincided with the ban on abortion by the Roman Catholic Church around the same time. So you had a lot more kids. That meant
again, I'm not presupposing that I know the answer, and I don't think you are either. But that's the kind of thing to look at. Like, how many second and third sons went? Was that their motivation, or were they also just adventurous people? I'm curious about that. It's all about asking the right questions and not assuming you know the answer.
Have you heard of the book? I think it's called Guns and Germs, or Germs and Guns.
Germs and Steel. Guns, Germs and Steel.
A lot of those correlations, not specifically causations, but a lot of those correlations were drawn through the research in that book as well. The ideology. It's
been a while since I read that book. I read that book back when I lived in Austin.
It's an interesting book. Some people, I mean, like for anyone who's not familiar, the book's thesis is that Europe ended up the way it did, at least in terms of wealth, because of certain inherent geographical limitations that allowed, basically the development of technology, but also immune system that could fight off certain diseases, and of course agrarian culture that allowed them to raise food without being dependent on a hunter-gatherer methodology.
Right. It tries to put some reason in the rhyme of human development and
Western.
Why Western civilization ended up the way it did.
Because China pretty much outdistanced everybody over most of early history. But
then they got full of themselves and decided to close themselves off.
Oh, well.
I could say that.
They didn't explore. Yeah.
They literally were like, dude, no. We're not going to infect ourselves with all these barbarian cultures. So close the doors and pull up the gate.
All right. Well, video folks, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the show. And Sarah will be back tomorrow. Scott Johnson will be with us tomorrow. And you will be with us tomorrow. Audio folks, stick around. There's more to come.